absolutely fascinating, and I've heard of a few family scandals over dinner. So yeah, it's very interesting how, you know, embarking on the family history journey can uncover things that we don't expect and that are not always good. And Niall, I wanted to ask if you minded, do you mind sharing that epic story of that 90-year-old rocking up on your doorstep?
Yeah.
Okay.
So my story is I had very little interest in family history until a few years ago when the family received a letter out of the blue. So a man turned up about maybe 90 years of age and told us, did we want to know more about our own family? So a few of us said yes, and there was all family photos who we didn't know who they were. And this man was able to tell us who everyone was, where all our ancestors had emigrated to. Just he linked a ton of different stories. He was able to tell us where certain family members were buried, where we had no idea, abroad. And he passed away a year or two after that, without just a ton of information, and he connected our family, and yeah, that's where the interest kind of started. So I'm scratching the surface of probably a gold mine of information that he might have had.
So how did he find you?
He so our family had moved from Westmeath to Kildare. From maybe we've been in Kildare about 100 years, and all the rest of the family had been in Westmeath. So he tracked all of the Westmeath family where he was from,
Right.
and our branch had kind of broken away, but we didn't know necessarily that our branch had broken away.
Right.
Yeah. So he was basically going down through each line, and he was following the story. Kind of travelled the world following the story of different family members, and a lot of them was up in America, and he traced all their stories, and then collected all the photos, and he just he had a curiosity for information.
Right.
And yeah, he just pieced a lot of different people together that had no connection, and interesting guy who was studying Latin in his 80s in the next town over for us, and we had no idea. Yeah, pretty random.
Thanks for sharing. I don't want to turn this into a family scandal night, but John, do you want to share what you shared with me before about the name change?
Oh yeah. So I'm professionally known as John Patrick, and genealogically I call myself John O'Grady. And the reason is that in the 1930s, my father fell out with his father, and his father was a magistrate. He decided that he needed to change his name because of the scandal of him leaving his first wife high and dry. And so he changed his name from Donald Edmund O'Grady to Peter James Patrick. And he took up with my mother. They had 2 children before they got married. And so he had to wait until his wife divorced him before he could marry my mother. And so then my brother, who's older than me, and myself, we were born in wedlock, whereas my 2 sisters were born out of wedlock. The story actually goes even further because my father could only produce a marriage certificate to his first wife and he joined the Air Force in 1939. When the second daughter was born in 1941, he put down the name of her mother as being his first wife, because then he could claim to be a married man with children and get an extra pay from the army. 30, 40 years later, this sister, the second sister, discovers that her mother is not really Olive Burke, my mother, but by documentation is Grace Finlayson, who she isn't really. My oldest sister, right, that being the bossy, you know how the firstborn is always the bossiest, goes to the registry office, tells them to change it all, and so the second sister is affronted by her older sister, taking charge of her own, documented birth. And so it's one of the many stories by which they fall out and fall in and fall out with each other. So yeah, there's a rich history of family scandal there. I'm scandal free.
That's the main thing. Yeah, thank you. We don't allow scandalous people to attend our events. Yeah. So did everyone have a nice dinner? Yes. And have some interesting conversations? Samuel, you're multitasking tonight. You're on cameras and you're also helping me with the PowerPoint. So can I get you to...
I'll set this back on.
Now that you've got energy after your burger. So, Patrick, I'm keen to hear your take on things as well after we watch this video with a few genealogists.
Oh, well, there's lots of experts in the room.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of experts at this dinner. The last dinner was more people at the very early stages of doing their family history, but lots of experts here tonight. So, I'll just whiz over these because many of you sound like you're already aware of all of this, but the Irish Family Heritage Trust have a network of genealogists, and it's just amazing how the surnames, you know, a lot of locals can locate you from your surname and where you're from in Ireland, which is a really unique thing. So I love this little map with all the surnames. Next, thanks Samuel. Yeah, so a lot of you probably are aware of all of this, but you know, by a surname, people can even tell in Ireland your religion. And they don't know how they can tell your religion, but it's just sort of something that the locals know immediately, whether you're Protestant or Catholic. And I've asked them before, like, but how do you know? And none of them know how they know, but they just know, which I find really fascinating. The family crests, which you guys probably know your family crest, but I've loved looking at the County Mayo crest, and then the Collins. My granny was a Nora Collins, so the Collins crest, and there are plenty of shops in Ireland where you can buy the little knickknacks. So yeah, I was just talking to John about, so this is the Celtic Way podcast with the genealogists, and they're also knowledgeable, so if you're interested in listening to that, that's the name of the podcast. And every Friday in... that picture's a bit blurry, but every Friday in Heidelberg at Inner FM 96.5 I run a radio show called Heartlands Radio, and interview some really interesting people, musicians and all sorts of interesting leaders in the Irish community here in Australia. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, 1 till 3 p.m. on Friday. These are the trips, so Ireland, Scotland, and Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and we can move on. These are a few you might recognise. Sue and Aram in that photo. Just a few photos of the tours. You can go to the next one. These photos are awesome because they're just photos of people meeting locals and being taken around to the headstones and all the rest of it. Next, we'll go next. Okay, that's not the best photo of me. Samuel, quickly press play. Is that volume going to be loud enough?
I don't think it's on through speaker. Give me a second. See if I can.
Flip it up, we'll let Samuel do. We'll do that for a minute. Samuel, you've got that photo back. Change it quickly. What was your name again?
My name?
Yeah.
Taylor.
Taylor, are you happy to share what you shared with me that was really interesting about the names? I forgot you. Is that okay? Another scandal.
Another scandal. So, like Niall, I became interested in doing the family history work when my grandfather passed away, and he left all of the records where he'd started mapping a lot of the history of their family. And so Niall and I at the same time have been looking into a lot of our family history. And we discovered, well actually I can't take credit for this, my mum's cousin found out that our connection to the Duffy family, my great-grandfather, was in fact not a Duffy. His father, listed on the birth certificate, similar, had passed away 2 years before. And so we are not Duffys, we're Moors. I need to discover how she found that out and what the connection is. But it was quite a scandal because we think the Moor father was much younger than Eliza, the mother. And so very scandalous. So she kept the name, and so all this time, you know, our family's been very tied to Ireland and the Duffy clan. But so that's our story. We did go over to Ireland, been many times. So we went over to see where the Duffy family were from. They're from Easkie and Sligo, and there's still the branch of that family that stayed, and there's loads of Duffys in that town. So it's pretty amazing. So hopefully we can connect with the Moor side of the family as we do more tracing of our family history.
It's amazing to sort of study the faith background of Irish people too, because I know in my granny's day everyone sort of believed in God, and in little houses everyone had their statues or the photo on the wall of Jesus, and it's just interesting to sort of go back there and see how that's not as prevalent now. But last time I was in Ireland, up north, so many people that I met said that there's a resurgence, and there's loads of people, especially young people, rocking up at churches every Sunday and asking, just that sort of saying they've had a vision or a dream, or they just want to attend church and see what it's about. So that was a really interesting thing for me to witness with so many. Particularly the Christian faith in the north, and still mainly the Catholic in the south, but there are lots of Christian churches that are popping up in the south as well. So that was really interesting because even though I didn't know much about it, I was really inspired by my granny's faith, and she used to have a Bible on the top of her bed and her bed head, and she used to let me borrow it, but then I had to give it back, and so I thought it was precious. And I knew that she always used to pray for me and the grandkids. I was one of 24 grandchildren, and it was interesting when she died in 2014. I was over in Sweden doing a master's. I studied peace and conflict research, and different things, just listening to your stories, different things activate that curiosity in finding out more about your family tree. And her death really sort of it was a huge loss, because I was really close to my granny, and it really activated that curiosity to know more in my life about her, and I wanted to go back to Ireland because somehow I felt closer to her back in Ireland. And so really precious. But the interesting thing, when she did pass away, I thought, I don't know whether it's her prayers or whatever it was, but I felt disconnected when I always, even building my charity in Nepal for 17 years, I always felt this presence that was looking after me. And when she passed away, I felt something lift. It was a really interesting experience, and a disconnection. But that her death actually activated not only my interest in family history, but I wanted to sort of connect to the faith. And I remember calling a friend back in Melbourne, who was the only real believer friend that I had that I knew believed in God. And I remember calling Ricky and saying, Ricky, because I was very sort of lost in the grief of losing Granny. And I remember saying to Ricky, how do I pray? How do I connect with God? And just sort of been on that journey ever since. So it's interesting how, learning about the past can sort of bring us back to connect to those things that they connected to as well. How are we going, Samuel?
I've got a story there.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome, Patrick. It's turned into an open mic night.
Well, it's my aunt by marriage was Bernadette O'Connell, and Bernadette would have been born in about 1924, and her grandmother was the youngest at Knock, the apparition at Knock. She was the youngest child at Knock. And so Bernadette's my godmother. And she passed away now, but when I'd go to Ireland, my cousin would say, oh, party, you've been touched by the holy ones, because of my godmother was brought up by the youngest apparitioner, or the youngest person who saw the apparition at Knock in the 1870s, I think it was. So it's also strange how history stretches out as well. How it's only a few generations back and you think it's so long, but then you can find these interesting connections. And so, following my family history, I found out some things that I didn't want to find out. I found out my mother's father was a Catholic Unionist in Skibbereen and ran the Southern Eagle, which was the most Unionist paper in the South. But because it hadn't been online and because it suppressed the history, I only found out that he was the secretary for the British recruiting in West Cork in the 1920s. And so I found out why they fled Skibbereen in the 1930s, because they were blackballed. But funnily enough, his cousins were the Hales cousins, who were in the Wind That Shook the Barley, and Sean Hales, who's assassinated in Dublin. So families were split in all sorts of directions. But I found a lot of that through newspapers, actually. So that's one thing that I would suggest, that newspapers are a great way to trace particular things about families.
Amazing. Wow.
Hopefully it's working now.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a claim to fame through their family heritage, or a scandal, or a faith story? When you mentioned,
I've got more scandals.
Sorry.
When you mentioned the movie just then, I went to a wedding in Ireland last September, and the brother of the bride said that his claim to fame was he was one of the. Has anyone seen Braveheart here? The movie Braveheart. There's a part at the end where they lift their kilts and show their bare backsides, and he was one of the bare backsides at the end of the movie. So he was very proud of that.